as we all know, it is extremely helpful to participate, to join this kind of gathering with a positive, constructive intention. And as I suggested yesterday as well as Friday evening, one of the ways to train ourselves, to train our minds, whenever and wherever and whatever we participate, physically, verbally, and mentally, participate with that action with a right intention is extremely helpful training. Not only in this kind of gathering, but also even when we engage in routine activities, try to engage in that routine activity with a right thought. In that way, gradually we'll have the mental state ready, positive mental state, ready to engage in that beginning of the event, very spontaneously, effortlessly. And that is one of the meanings of being training our mind, meditating. So, try all our best to join today's activities with a positive, constructive intention. As I suggested yesterday, that can be very, very simple, straightforward, common sense, positive mind. Or it can be supported or motivated by sophisticated philosophical reasons, being here and to participate in the activities. Or that can be motivated by your spiritual path, like following the teachings of the Buddha. Therefore, it is up to the individual what kind of positive, constructive mind that you would like to start and join the activities, such as listening to the talk, contemplation, meditation, and recitation. In the Buddhist tradition, traditionally explained, there are two kinds of intention that we can start with. The first intention in Tibetan, it is called Gui Kunung. That means intention, the causal intention, literal translation. Causal intention in the sense of that intention that make you to come here and to join the activities. That is extremely crucial. Sometimes I make with a joke. I say, particularly people who come in the evening classes in London, back in London. If you come here, because straight away after the work going back home, your husband or wife or children are very demanding, so you would like to have 1.5 hours or 2 hours rest, relax, and come here. That's also fine. But anyway, yeah. The other intention is called intention at the time of the action. So that means the intention in this case, while we are here, right here and now, while we are engaging in the actual activities, at that time, the intention, having a positive intention to join the class. Both are crucial. Causal intention, the intention that leads us here to join, and the intention at the time of the action, that means right here and now. Both are crucial. And at the moment, at this stage now, is the second one. Right here, we are here, physically here, verbally, you may say some recitations, and mentally to listen to the talk, contemplate. So while we are in the middle of the process, middle of the activities, and every now and then to set a right intention is helpful. Not only at the beginning of the class, during the class, during the break time, every now and then, briefly, not very long period, just maybe 1 or 2 seconds, to reconnect to the intention that we set at the beginning of the class, or the intention that we set before we come here, that causal intention. Just briefly, in that way, more in a subconscious level, that intention, the causal intention that we had, maybe some of you may have put in your diary to come here a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, even that intention will continue right here and now. It will briefly reconnect with that. And that is really very, very helpful. While in the action, our mind might be fully involved with, in this case, listening to my talk, contemplating what is said. But briefly, every now and then, just 1 or 2 seconds, briefly touching on that intention that we set, causal intention, or the beginning of the class, that will make huge difference. That permeate the intention will permeate to the actual activities. Very, very useful to do that. So try all our best to have a positive, a constructive intention to join this gathering. Because our topic is introduction to the Vajrayana, Buddhist Vajrayana practice. I want to say just briefly, because of that, I want to say very briefly, the refuge and bodhicitta is part of setting a positive intention, particularly people who follow the teachings of the Buddha. Taking refuge in 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Having that mind, holding that mind, every now and then, if it is possible, as many times as possible during the day, in the morning, when we woke up, and whenever there's opportunity, to remind ourselves, people who have taken refuge, already taken refuge, to remind ourselves the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are my refuge. That reminding, that mind, holding that mind will come quite spontaneously and quite strongly when we know exactly or clearly, when we know why we need refuge. Why we need refuge. And that question is very, very crucial. As I mentioned yesterday, why do I need religion? similar to that, more narrow this case, why do I need refuge? Answering that question as detailed as possible, as clear as possible, is crucial to hold this mind. If we are able to answer that question quite well, quite detailed, and to have the convincing answer, then the mind taking refuge will come quite spontaneously. And answer to that question very much lies within this mind and body, the life that we have. Although the life that we have, the human life, the human existence, is great, amazing. Based on this life we can do many, many amazing things. Worldly amazing things, also, some kind of other amazing things. And there's no doubt with that. This human existence that we have is really, really special. Nevertheless, no matter how special it is, no matter how amazing it is, still it is not free. Our existence is not free from some of the deep-rooted psychological difficulties like attachment, aversion, ignorance, which are still very much deep-rooted within our psychic, within our mental state. Very, very much ready to rupture, ready to occur as soon as conditions are met. And that is the reason, we need to try to understand, need to take refuge. Because these are the causes, these are the conditions that that bring pain and difficulties within ourselves and the surrounding, within our surroundings. And knowing, understanding the seriousness of these distorted mental states are deeply abiding within our mental state is the key factor to take refuge. So people who have been practicing, following teachings of the Buddha, it is crucial to contemplate, to reflect on the seriousness of these distorted mental states. Afflictions are still within us, even though we have this amazing human existence and live in a very prosperous the lifestyles and environments. As long as they remain within us, within our mental state, we are not completely free from suffering and difficulties. And that is the reason that we need to contemplate. Then another point which is useful here is bit by bit try to understand the qualities of the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Buddha, we can talk qualities of the Buddha as the historical Buddha, Gautama, or Buddhas, that fully awakened beings. Although oneself at this stage is not fully awakened being, but we have the seeds, we have the potentials to become fully awakened beings. Our minds become fully awakened mind. That is that the meaning, that a fully awakened mind, meaning is very, very simple. Very, very simple. There's no hidden or the meaning. Fully awakened in the sense of the compassion and the wisdom are fully cultivated, fully developed, and that is the meaning of fully awakened. When our present, that the very biased, very partial, very not very very not very frequent, that compassion that we have, if we nurture it to become very unbiased, very spontaneous, very impartial, and there all the time, that is here the meaning of fully cultivated compassion. And that can be done. We have the seeds, we have the methods, that can be done. And also the wisdom. At the present, we have the ability to judge, to make the decision. And if that wisdom, if we nurture further and more deeper reality of the things and events, that wisdom can become the fully awakened wisdom. So the Buddha, in the Sanskrit term, Buddha, or in English, awaken, fully awakened, is not something mysterious phenomenon. It is not something that unknowable phenomenon. If we look at more detail, that is perfectly possible, and it is already there are beings who are fully awakened beings, and we ourselves can become fully awakened beings. And that qualities of the Buddha should be contemplated, reflected on. Then we'll have an aspiration ourselves to become fully awakened being. And the Dharma, the teachings. Again, qualities of the teachings. Here the teachings should not be understood. In this case, Dharma should not be understood that oral or the scripture, the texts, the text. No. Here the Dharma refers to the content of those oral teachings, those sutras, and those commentaries. So the content of the oral teachings, those scriptures, can be put into two things: the path, and the such as the Noble Eightfold Path, or some other we can elaborate. Or yesterday we briefly touched on the three trainings: concentration, ethics, and wisdom. Those are the Dharma. When we cultivate concentration, when we live an ethical life, and when we cultivate wisdom, then we are taking refuge in Dharma. The actual refuge is the result of cultivation of these three trainings, or a little bit elaborated, those Noble Eightfold Paths. When we cultivate or live our life with the Noble Eightfold Paths, the final result will be the complete cessation, complete extinction of dukkha and the origins of dukkha. And that is the refuge. When we say, I take refuge, that's the real, actual refuge. So Dharma actually refers to that. When that complete cessation, is experienced within ourselves, through the cultivation of Noble Eightfold Paths, or the three trainings, then the refuge is, if you use the term achieved or experienced, and that is Dharma too, actual Dharma. And quality of these two, the path and the result of the path, should be contemplated, contemplated, reflect on. Then we would have the aspiration, yearning to have, Dharma within our lives. And Sangha, qualities of the Sangha. Sangha, this term, the Sanskrit term, has many meanings, In here, the three jewels, within the three jewels, Sangha refers to the people. That can be anybody, lay, ordained, male, female. There's no discrimination. As long as that person has direct realization of selflessness or emptiness, that person is Sangha. And because of due to that kind of realization, the person's life, how he or she lives, is something very, very inspiring. And that's what here the understanding of quality of Sangha is very, very helpful. So two things I want to summarize, particularly people who have already taken refuge and say the refuge lines, in a daily basis. It is very, very useful. Say those refuge lines with a feeling, with some kind of, the feeling, without not just verbally saying it. And to do that, it is very, very helpful to spend a little bit of time on those 2 points. Why I'm taking refuge and whom I'm taking refuge. When you have the answer to those 2 questions, then taking refuge will come very, very natural. It is very natural. Now the meaning of taking refuge, when you say in English, I take refuge in Buddha, mainly the mental state is counted as a taking refuge, not the verbally saying it. So the mentally, when you say I take refuge in Buddha, mentally we should think, feel from our heart, gut feeling that Buddha or the Buddhas as our teacher or teachers, mentors. And that feeling is meaning of taking refuge in Buddha. And when we say taking refuge in Dharma, verbally, mentally think, coming hours, days, weeks, months, years and decades. No matter how long it does take, I'm going to enhance concentration, live my life ethically, and cultivate wisdom. And not just mentally thinking it, but practically doing it, day by day. Of course, some days are not that easy, but at least continuing it. Then that is the meaning of taking refuge in Dharma. If we do that, we will see the benefits of taking teachings of the Buddha as one's own spiritual path. And when we say I take refuge in Sangha, verbally saying it, mentally, from our heart, very genuinely, very sincerely feel, experience, treat the Sangha members, not just the ordained monks, but Sangha members, are one's own spiritual friends, supporters, to share with them your experiences during the journey, spiritual journey. Sometimes joys, happiness, and fulfillment. Some days frustrations, disappointment, and difficulties. These are reality. In the spiritual journey, not all the time peaceful, painless, or the very blissful. No. There are ups and downs. So therefore, share our experiences with others and learn from them. Talk to the others. That is the way, meaning of taking refuge in Sangha. And holding that mind, the mind taking refuge in three jewels at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of an event. Familiarizing like that is very, very helpful. When we do that, then while we are in the middle of an event, if the event is either going very successful, if it's business event, or the event is not going successful, but starting with that kind of mind will make huge difference. Event may not go, the project may not go as we wish it, but there won't be deep disappointment if we started the event project with this kind of mind which has ability to see, to view, more holistic, have a wider perspective, not just the particular project, not just the particular event. So, taking refuge taking refuge is very, very helpful to familiarize ourselves in that manner. Then the second one is, the people who follow the Bodhisattva teachings. People who follow the Bodhisattva teachings and the Vajrayana teachings. To those people, not only the mind taking refuge is crucial in their daily lives, but also holding the mind, the altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta, is very, very important part of your spiritual journey. If you have chosen to follow the Bodhisattva teachings and the Vajrayana teachings. Again, this mind, the bodhicitta, can be experienced, although it won't be straightforward, because it's the self-centered mind, the opposite of the altruistic awakened mind, which is the self-centered mind, has been our best friend for many, many, many years, decades, even if you just think about it in this lifetime, let alone for many, many lifetimes in the past. So the self-centered mind being in the center of our mentality, cultivation of altruistic awakened mind won't be that straightforward, but it can be done. It can be done. It can be done if we get the right procedure, right structure. And this mind, the self-centered mind, the altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta, is the result of cultivation of two aspirations, two yearnings, two different aspirations. The first aspiration is aspiration to benefit, to work for the sake of all living beings. And that is the first aspiration that we should have, cultivate. And there are many well-established techniques, traditional techniques, that we can use as a, the methodology to cultivate this aspiration, like the Shantideva clearly, nicely put it, like the technique called equalizing and exchanging oneself with others. Very, very powerful technique. This way, if we apply that technique, sure we will have this aspiration to benefit or work for the sake of others. And the second aspiration is in order to fulfill the goal or the aim of the first aspiration, then the second aspiration is aspiration that ourself to experience fully awakened mind, our own present mind, thoughts, emotions, transform into fully awakened mind, in order to have the skills, strengths, dedications to work for the sake of the others, which is the aim of the first aspiration. So these two aspirations, when these two aspirations are, cultivated, developed, using some of these well-established techniques according to one's own mental disposition, needs, different techniques may suit different mental dispositions. When these two aspirations are culminated, developed within ourselves, and the result, culmination of these two aspirations is this mind called bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. One of the most advanced altruistic minds. There are many, many altruistic minds that we can experience, but this one, the altruistic mind, which is the culmination of these two aspirations, is one of the most advanced altruistic mind. Having this mind on the top of refuge is one of the key points people who want to follow the Vajrayana teachings. As I repeated many times yesterday, without this mind, bodhicitta, the altruistic awakened mind, the practicing Vajrayana, Buddhist Vajrayana, practices be very, very, what's called, not very helpful, not very meaningful. So one of the key factors to have that. So try all our best to hold a positive, a constructive mind as an intention to join today's activities. So we just stay for a few seconds in silence during that. Try all our best to hold our right intention to participate in the activities. on to talk about this setting the right intention. What we'll do now, have a comfortable sitting, and instead of doing meditation right now, I will continue to talk on the topic. Then when we feel we are completely exhausted, we'll do a meditation. Whether it will be productive meditation or not, I don't know. But we'll do meditation. First, make yourself comfortable, sitting comfortably, and then I will continue to talk on the topic. Just briefly recall what we have done yesterday. Not very much, but I tried to touch on some of the important prerequisites if somebody wants to follow the Vajrayana teachings. That's what I did yesterday. I started with explaining in the Nyingma tradition. I started with the first saying, why do I need religion? That's an important question to ask. Although some of us that might be quite late, or they have taken some form of spiritual path, but still it is worthwhile to ask every now and then, why do I need religion in my life? I started with that, and that is, I find it's very, very important question. I always ask quite often to myself, why do I need religion in my life? What it makes different to my life if I didn't have religion? And why do I have to follow the teachings of the Buddha? If I didn't have teachings of the Buddha in my life, what kind of life would it be that I have? And those are the useful questions to ask. Seriously and very genuinely. Not in a pure, what you call it, cynicism, not in a cynical manner, but in a sincere, genuine manner to find further answer to those questions. And sometimes asking that question refresh my sort of way of approaching the teachings of the Buddha and in my daily life when I try to answer that question, and that's very helpful. So we started that. Then I moved on to say that what are the prerequisites, and in that to practice Buddhist Vajrayana, and in that I touched on in the Nyingma tradition. In the Nyingma tradition, there's this very nicely structured saying the 9 vehicles, and that indicates in the Nyingma tradition as somebody who is interested to want to practice out of the 9 yanas, the last one, the advanced one, which is Ati Yoga, and which Dzogchen tradition belongs to. And he or she, has to train herself or himself or herself from the first yana, that is, main teaching is Four Noble Truths, to all the way up to. That is what I stated, and also I stated a little bit on the some of the Tsongkhapa's suggestions based on like a foundation of all good qualities. Then we moved on to talk about briefly, particularly yesterday, one of the important factors is those 4 complete purities. What we will see in the Vajrayana meditation manual, what kind of things are involved, particularly in the earlier stage, in the Vajrayana, what's called the meditation manual. And we will see in the meditation manual with these four things, which are technically called four complete purities: environment, body, resources, and the activities. And those are something useful. Why those are useful? Because what is the unique practice? What is the unique practice? The practice which is not available in the Sutrayana, in the Bodhisattvayana, but only available in the Vajrayana. And why the Vajrayana practice become very effective to attain enlightenment, and that comes from here, because in the Vajrayana teachings and practices, there's this, the practices themselves, while in the causal state, while in the creating the causes to attain enlightenment, the causal the causes that they are creating are very much concordant with the resultant states. And that is what here, environment, body, resources, and the activities are explained in here. And that's also quite, particularly people who are relatively new at this stage, may be a little bit difficult, but if you bear in mind, then later in the future, when you start to see some of the comprehensive Vajrayana meditation manual, you will see all those elements in that meditation manual. Then you know exactly, what is involved, unique practice, unique meditation in the Vajrayana. And also I mentioned briefly some of those terminologies, like Vajrayana, Mantrayana, and some of those, particularly Mantrayana, the meaning of Mantrayana. And there, one important thing to, again, at this stage might be too early for many of you, but useful to remember or remind, to bear in mind. Mantrayana, meaning protecting our mind, protecting our mind in a unique way in the Vajrayana practices. How Vajrayana practices protect our minds? Vajrayana practices protect our mind from the appearances and the graspings of the ordinariness. Appearances and the grasping of the ordinariness that we have in our day-to-day life creates all the problems, creates all the difficulties. This endless this, what you call the circle, is due to the appearances that follow the grasping of the ordinariness that we have. And the Vajrayana practices cut that kind of appearances and graspings of ordinariness of the things and events, including ourselves. And that's something quite useful to remember. Then we moved on to talk a little bit about the deity yoga, the deity yoga. Although I briefly mentioned about the importance of, if you are going to engage in Vajrayana practice, it is important to start from one of the Kriya or one of the action Tantra deity. Initially take a practice, action Tantra deity, whichever you prefer. There are many different types of deities. Familiarize ourselves, really familiarize ourselves with that deity, action Tantra. Tantric, one of the ancient Tantric deities. Some of those practices involved with ancient Tantric, which we are going to briefly look at soon. And then, if oneself is ready to move to take one of the highest yoga Tantra, that way, that kind of procedure will be extremely helpful, and which also I mentioned briefly yesterday. Then the deity yoga. What is involved in deity yoga? Two things are involved, as I mentioned. The divine identity, creating, developing, within the practitioner himself or herself, holding the divine, strong divine identity through the meditation of divine bodies, divine environment, divine resources, and divine activities. Through that, really creating a strong divine identity, and that involves in deity yoga. Another thing is involved in the deity yoga is having the clarity of the deity. All the details, all the details of the deity's body, deity's mandala, deity's activities, all the details, having a very, very clear, having clarity. Those two, in Tibetan, sub-self, Ngajel, Senam. So there are these different terms. Ngajel, literally translated, Ngajel means pride, divine pride. Hwai Ngajel in Tibetan. Hwai Ngajel means divine, Ngajel is pride. But you can translate saying divine identity. Sanam, when we visualize a deity and having the clarity of the deity's body and the environment is important part of the deity yoga. So some of those that I have briefly touched on yesterday. Okay now. So today I want to start to say, what really encourages us to take the Vajrayana teachings, Vajrayana practices in our daily life. And particularly a person who has already taken the Bodhisattva teachings, the Bodhisattva teachings, like the cultivation of bodhicitta and the practicing the six perfections, have taken the Bodhisattva initially aspirational bodhicitta, then maybe later have taken the Bodhisattva vows. So himself or herself have got, if I use that expression, in his or her plate is full. Do you know what I mean? The plate is completely full with the Bodhisattva and the teachings and practices. Why he or she wants to take more, saying Vajrayana teachings. What really leads or what really encourages him or her to move from the Bodhisattva teachings and practices to the Vajrayana teachings and practices. As I mentioned yesterday, in terms of the cultivation of bodhicitta, in terms of the development of wisdom realizing emptiness is concerned, they are taught perfectly in the Bodhisattva teachings. Based on Bodhisattva teachings, practitioner can have complete experience in bodhicitta and a complete experience in wisdom realizing emptiness. Why he or she need further? And that question is really important. Quite often, I may have said this in here before, quite often people have this misunderstanding or little bit distorted understanding. Practicing Bodhisattva teachings or practicing Vajrayana teachings is to attain enlightenment. And that's wrong. That is wrong. Attaining enlightenment is not the main goal. In the Bodhisattva teachings, attaining enlightenment is not the main goal. In the Vajrayana teachings, attaining enlightenment is not the main goal. Attaining enlightenment is the methodology, like the tools. If you're going to buy a tool in those tool shops, buying the tool is not the main purpose. What you want to do, buy a tool, like buy a nice hoover. Buying the tool is not the main goal. The main goal is have that hoover and make your rooms clean. That is the main goal. And it is exactly the same in here. Attaining enlightenment is not the main goal of Bodhisattva teachings. Attaining enlightenment is the tool to fulfill the Bodhisattva teachings. And it is the same. Attaining enlightenment is not the main goal. Not the goal, it is the tool in the Vajrayana teachings. There's a attaining enlightenment, then there's a goal to be achieved. But many people have this other way around. Attaining enlightenment is the goal. And not only that, attaining enlightenment is what I want to do. That is also a mistake. Little bit not very precise. So the goal is in the both yana, either Bodhisattva or Vajrayana. The goal is to serve living beings. That's the goal, not the attaining enlightenment. So if somebody say, I want to take Vajrayana teachings and practices because I want to attain enlightenment, then he or she is not in the right mindset. So then a person who is in a Bodhisattva teachings, and he or she is fully immersed in the Bodhisattva teachings and practices, fully immersed. And when he or she immersing, or himself or herself immersing into that Bodhisattva teachings and practices, and the goal that serving living beings is taking relatively long, then he or she may search, is there another way to achieve that goal, serving living beings, in a more sooner than the later. That is the key. But for many of us, that never happens. That never happens. Because we even not have reached to just practicing Bodhisattva properly. So that here it is very, very important for us to be very honest and very sincere. I mean, some days, sometimes we mimic. We just, in the Tibetan tradition, we have this saying, oh, take it initiation. Who knows when we are going to die? I think it's quite a reasonable expression, but that is very casual. It is reasonable, the statement, but a very casual. And the casual, way of engaging in spirituality will not make that much progress. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says very often, if you're going to take, it is up to you whether you're going to take spirituality or not in your daily life. If you're going to take it, then take it very seriously, not casually. Like I have a friend. We are very, very good friends, very, very good friends. And I know her husband for a long time. We are very good friends. And she likes to go to buy clothes in this particular shop you may have here, Primark. Do you know that? You have? Oh, that's good. But you have the IKEA. Yeah. Yes. So in the UK there is a particular shop called Primark. Very, very cheap. Very, very cheap. Also relatively, for one season, the clothes that you buy, it's all right. But after next season, you have to throw them. It's very cheap. And I usually I don't want to go to hell run. If you go to that shop, it is like a hell run, everybody. Yes, then you have to queue like this for the fitting and so forth. So I usually tease her, she goes quite often with her, and her husband mourns that. Not only the money is spent, but also every now and then have a piles of clothes to give to the charity or throw away or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, what I'm talking about is, I lost my point. Anyway, so when we take it, spirituality in a very casual manner, then we won't make that much progress. So we have to take it very. When I say seriously, don't misunderstand that. I have another experience with other people, and quite often, people come to see me to say, yeah, I've been in Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism from such and such time. Now I want to become monk or nun. And I say, are you sure? Are you serious? You want to take monk road? And usually I teach them. In the West, when you join a company, not all the time, but quite often, when you join a company, first you're starting, you join the company, particularly in the traditional way, you start to clean the floor, then you promote it bit by bit by bit, and after 25 years you might be the CEO or the executive director. Taking robes, becoming Buddhist monks and nuns, is not like that kind of promotion. You are promoted. I've taken refuge, such years now, quite some time ago. Now I should promote it myself to become monks and nuns. And I said, no, that's not the right way. That doesn't work in the process. It may work in the Western way of, joining the company and eventually you get promoted, but it doesn't work here. So when you say seriously, I don't mean become rigid, become saying, okay, now I've done this, I'm going to do this one, take. Not exactly. That's also not really nice or skillful ways to take it. So important. Yeah, anyway, I'm not saying too much things. So the key turning point, somebody who already seriously himself or herself immersed into bodhisattva teachings and practices. Then when he or she wants to practice, take the Vajrayana teachings, key turning point is not, I want to attain enlightenment as soon as possible. Key turning point is, I want to serve living beings in a best, in a perfect manner as soon as possible. And it seems that if I take the Vajrayana teachings, that may going to happen a little bit sooner than if I follow the Bodhisattva teachings. That is the turning point. That is the turning point. Turning point is not, I want to attain enlightenment sooner. So very useful to remember that. Some of the teachings or practices, this is very nicely illustrated. For example, in the Gelug tradition, the twice a month that we perform ritual offering, and it is called Guru Puja. Guru Puja. In that beginning of that Guru Puja, after taking refuge, saying Namaste, after taking refuge, then there's a section generating bodhicitta. And in that section generating bodhicitta, there are 2 or 3 stages generating bodhicitta. The first one saying, so that means, for the sake of all sentient beings, I myself assume as a, what's called a particular this deity, and to attain enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. The second says, as quick as possible. And that indicates the first one is the bodhicitta and the bodhisattva in the teachings. The second one is indicates bodhicitta, which is bodhicitta that the altruistic mind that he or she has developed. That altruistic mind that he or she has developed really what's called motivates himself or herself to search means and methods to attain enlightenment as soon as possible, because to serve living beings as soon as possible. And that is the key factor. So extremely useful to remember that. The key, what's the turning point from the Bodhisattva to the Vajrayana. All right. Now, what I'm going to do, we're going to do a short meditation. Otherwise, too much work. So the meditation is the same purpose. The purpose for gradually to enhance, to cultivate, further cultivate a calm, clear, and focused mind. The mind which has the qualities of stillness and clarity, which I mentioned yesterday, I will not repeat again. It is done, that kind of qualities, clarity, stability and clarity can be experienced, when we do these kind of about 10 minutes silent meditation every now and then. It will continue that. Stillness and the clarity will grow, will cultivate, will experience. So we are going to do this short silent meditation. 15 minutes tea break. We'll start this afternoon first session, and we'll start with the chanting Chinese mantra together. So just before the lunch break, I was talking about what you call the receiving initiation, part of the receiving initiation. There are also taking, having commitments and so forth. Yeah. So now I'm going to move on to when we, after receiving the initiation, a particular deity, and there are traditions give some, say, the commitment to practice the deity that we receive initiation, and some that don't have particular commitment, maybe ask just say a few mantras. Then also it depends on the at what level of initiation that we are receiving in terms of the having or not having commitment to practice that deity. Now, in this context, I'm going to talk about first when we do a deity practice. There are two ways. To do that. Or some cases, these two are not sort of. It's the safest. There are two ways, and the Tibetan term they are used. They are called Dakye, Dungye, and Dakye. So Dungye literally means front. Ge means generation. Dungye. What does that mean? That means the deity that you are going to practice is visualized in front of you. And that is called front generation in English. Front generation. The deity that you are meditating is visualized in front of you. That's called front generation in Tibetan Buddhism. There's another way to visualize deity, not deity in front of you, but in Tibetan it is called Dakye, and this, which I mentioned briefly yesterday, that means self-generation. Oneself visualize into the deity. Some deities practice have both front generation as well as self-generation. It depends on which deity practice that you do. Some of the Kriya action tantra may not have self-generation. That means may not have oneself visualized into deity. But occasionally, some of the Kriya Tantra also have, the self-generation. Now, this term, self-generation and front generation, particularly the self-generation, which I'm going to talk a little bit later in the High Super Tantra, is something very important and very effective meditation. But in which way that we visualize deity, deity oneself as a deity, or deity in front of you, or deity above your head. Sometimes that you can do above your head. If you visualize deity in front of you, then of course deity is facing towards you. You are facing towards deity, looking like a tanka. But if you visualize the deity above your head, then yourself and deities are facing the same direction. Not like deity is facing backward, you are facing forward. Not like that. Both are facing the same direction. So that is something with general what is involved. Now, visualization, and that is something useful and helpful to know. The term, these two terms are used are not the same. Generation, from generation, and self-generation. The term generation is slightly different from the visualization. Visualization has a connotation of just instantly. Instantly you visualize yourself as a deity. Instantly you visualize in front of you a deity. When you say generation, generating from generation, or the self-generation, it is usually not instant. It has different stages, follow the different stages. But either which way you do, the visualization or the generation of deity, both. The key factor, which I briefly touched on other day, the key factor here is the understanding of emptiness. All the visualization, all the generation from or self-generation are done within the sphere of emptiness. When I say sphere of emptiness, there are two meanings. The first meaning is, oneself first, if you need analytical meditation, or if your meditation on emptiness doesn't need analytical meditation, oneself, meditate on emptiness. So the entire sort of one's own, what you call the experience, one's own entire sort of sphere of existence is tuned into that understanding of emptiness. And it is also sometimes that term is in that process is also called dissolve into emptiness. Entire universe dissolve into emptiness. The meaning of dissolve into emptiness, in particular in this context, it is the meaning. So the meaning is how it dissolves into emptiness. It is not like emptiness is like some kind of acid or water. Then all the universe drop into that, and the entire universe dissolved in the acid. It is not like that. It is our understanding of emptiness. Understanding of emptiness is expanded towards entire universe. So the entire universe is realized in that nature of emptiness. I'm not going to talk what is emptiness because that's not our topic, but that's what here. And then from that state, then either you can do the front generation, or you can do the self-generation, or you can just do the instant visualization. In that way, it is like a more like a, as I mentioned yesterday, like a, creating or the bringing up a completely new thing. The old, this body, this mind, this universe, this resources, this environment, dissolved into emptiness. Dissolved into emptiness, as I mentioned earlier, realize within the sphere of emptiness. So within that, what you call the feeling, notion, experience, then do the visualization or the generation of deity. Okay, so that is really important. Almost every single sadhana, do you remember sadhana, meditation manual, when it reach your recitation or your reading is reached at the section where either the from generation or the self generation, there is usually there is a Sanskrit line saying Om Shur Nyata Dana Vaja Sobhava Ema Koham. It is saying Om Shur Nyata, that all phenomena, all things and events are in the nature of emptiness. And from that nature of emptiness, I am risen into this particular dating, whatever process. And that is the marking point. A standardized meditation manual had that mantra. That mantra. Om Shur Nyata Dana Vaja Sobhava Ema Koham. In fact, some of those high yoga tantra meditation manual, every different stages when you do the meditation and to follow the meditation manual, there is always this particular, there's always the indication, whatever stage that you are meditating. Say that you are meditating on the stage of mandala, as do you remember yesterday, those 4 completion, for complete purities, environment, resource, body, resource, and activity. Each one of these, and there are also many subdivisions. These are the main, the outlines. Each one of these stages, then some of the sadhana, some of the meditation manual will remind you are moving in that stage, visualization of divine mandala. But again, the entire divine mandala is visualized, is generated within the sphere of emptiness. If you reach at the stage where offering resources, again, offering is first, before it is offered, it is blessed, and it is blessed within the concept of emptiness. So the emptiness, every single stages of the self-generation, from generation, everything is done within this notion of emptiness. So in that case, then, as I briefly mentioned yesterday, the creating or developing new identity, new divine identity works, new divine environment works, new divine activity works when we're done within that sphere of emptiness. So that is something quite useful to remember. So the from generation, self-generation, or sometimes you can say the visualization, which way we do, manuals have those. It is crucial for us to bear in mind, the generation of deity is done within the sphere of emptiness. So I want to show you a brief, the sort of process, or brief sort of an example you will see here. This is in the Kriya Tantra and the Action Tantra. Some of the meditation manual, for example, this, which I put it, which is relatively common, it is saying there are 6 stages, 6 stages. Deity of emptiness, deity of sound, deity of letter, deity of form, deity of mudra, and deity of symbol. There are 6. What is talking about here? It is talking about how we visualize deities. And this is in the Kriya Tantra, which is, as I mentioned several times before, some of these Kriya Tantra visualizations are very, very helpful in the later if you want to do the high soul tantra visualization. For example, here it says deity of emptiness. It is exactly, or the term deity is used, it is simply talking about, meditate on emptiness. So that your mind, which is meditation on the emptiness, then that mind becomes the main substances to visualize the deity. The main cause that, that either do the front generation or do the self generation, the main cause or the substantial cause for the deity is your mind. It's your mind meditating on emptiness. Your mind, if you are able to, realizing emptiness is the substantial cause to visualize either front or the self. Then it is a deity of sound. In that sphere of emptiness, when your mind is completely immersed, completely sort of immersed into this realization, in this understanding of emptiness, then from that a sound of the mantra. For example, if your meditational deity is Chandrasic, a sound of the Chandrasic mantra, like Om Mani Padme Hum, or any kind of sound of the mantra, the Chandrasic mantra. So we are talking about a process of visualization, a process of visualizing or generating deity in front or self, say the front. So yourself as a meditator, your mind meditate on emptiness and merge into that realization of emptiness. There's no what's called duality between your mind and the emptiness that your mind is realized. There's no that kind of duality, like a one entity, and that is the deity of emptiness. And from that state, then the imagining or visualizing the sound of the mantra, that particular deity. In this case, say the Om Mani Padme Hum. A gentle, the sound of the mantra. And that sound of the mantra, which is here, is called deity of sound. Then that sound of the mantra, sound gradually form into a letter. A letter of, in this case, Chandrasik's mantra, letter, like the Shri. Shri is the Chandrasic mantra's main syllable, Shri. So that sound eventually form into a letter. Although it's a letter, but nature of light. Nature of light, not in some kind of, what's called physical, but in light. That's the third stage. What's happening here is, this help us gradually, stage by stage, to visualize or to generate deity. This is also extremely helpful to cultivate concentration. And cultivating concentration within the sphere of understanding of emptiness is extremely powerful. And there's this statement in Tibetan. It is also relevant in here. In Tibetan it says this. Tatok ne gom chowa, gom ne tawa chowa. So the tatok ne gom chowa, tawa means view. In this case, view of emptiness. Some people, some practitioners, first gain the understanding of emptiness, understanding of emptiness, understanding of selflessness. From that understanding, then he or she moves to Dakongye, Gonsolwa. Through that, then try to cultivate karma fighting, Shin. So first, have the understanding of emptiness or selflessness, that's the view. From that understanding of emptiness, then gradually move into cultivation of shamatha. Some people may do other way around, and many of us do that other way around. Gontong ne tawa tsolwa. Gontong ne tawa tsolwa. That means first cultivate single-pointed mind or shamatha. When himself or herself gain the single-pointed mind or shamatha, then based on that, then search or try to understand the real. And this is the normal how we do. But some of the what we call the sharp faculty practitioners, some of those sharp faculty practitioners do it other way around. From the understanding of the view, have right view, first have the understanding of the right view, then search the meditation on. In this case, meditation in the sense of single-pointed mind. Usually, that is more effective. More effective. Effective in the sense of individual who does in that fashion, that manner, already, he or she already knows why he or she needs the shamatha. If we do other way around, we may gain shamatha, but we may not gain view. So in this case, in the Tantra Vajrayana case, is the first one, Datong Gomchowa. Although some practitioner may first gain a shamatha before coming to the Vajrayana, when the practitioner practices in the Bodhisattvayana or Sutrayana, gain the shamatha, then gradually move. That's the difference. But here, looking at this kind of process of visualization, it is very much from the first gain, have the understanding of emptiness, then go to this cultivation of single-pointed mind. So now here, what I'm talking about is this: these stages, these different stages. First, have the understanding of emptiness. One's own mind completely immersed into that understanding on emptiness. From there, then gradually, hear a sound of the mantra. In this case, cherished mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and single-pointedly focusing one's own mind there. And then gradually, that sound of the mantra gradually transforms into a syllable letter 3, in this case, generation. That is called deity of the letter. Yeah, deity of the letter. Very, very helpful meditation. Then, from there, then it is called deity of form. So, from the letter 3, in this case, generation letter 3, then really, the charasi is generated or visualized, the form. So there is this kind of procedure, or there's this kind of, from the subtle, then it getting a little bit grosser, and a little bit grosser. From the emptiness into sound, from sound into the syllable, from the syllable into the actual form of the deity. And that kind of visualization or the generation of deity is very, very helpful. Then the next two, the deity of mudra and deity of symbol, these are more like a, for example, traditionally, when, like a few years ago, not very grand sort of celebration, but there is a sign of that. The present English Queen's grandson and his wife, when they have their first child, his son, yeah. And there is this naming ceremony. And there were what you call the gambling betting shops, betting what name they are going to give. So, my point is this: traditionally, when the royal family, they have a son and daughter. Usually they do son, and they have this ceremony. And himself, this boy, young boy, is designated or labeled as a future king, of that country. And in here, sometimes, why they do that? Why they do that? They do that, let the public know this is going to be the ruler. So they already put it in the public's head. This is going to be there. So to convince, to make it solid, to identity be a solid identity. This is your future king. And that human mind works like that. Our human mind, just once seeing that, will not necessarily will convinced. To fully convinced, need to be, reintroduced again and again in many different ways. And these two, a deity of mudra is very much, and deity of symbol is very much in that case. For us to visualize a deity in front of us, or ourselves as a deity. Now here, particularly in both cases, particularly when we visualize oneself as a deity, do you remember yesterday? Deity yoga, there are two main factors: divine identity and clarity. So divine, to develop this divine identity, oneself as a visualized or generated as a deity, these are the mudras and symbols are the convincing, not just yourself visualize, but also have particular hand gesture, particular symbols. Those are the reinforcing your divine identity as the worldly that we do. Another example, I will give you a nice example, is in India. Still they do in India when a couple, a man and woman get married, and even if it's a small town, sometime in the afternoon. These days, I was told, extremely elaborated. Even some very poor family, they do this very elaboration. But when I was in India in 1970s and 80s, just behind my parents' house, there is a small village, Indian village, and we know exactly when they have a wedding. So the traditional, what they do, they have this one or two men carrying a very, what you call not any pleasant drum, not pleasant, very, that, very strange. A very thin bamboo trays with this drum, and one small, very thin bamboo, beat it, play sort of annoying sound, and it goes first. Then the bride and groom follow with that, and they goes ups and downs on the street. Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? What's the significance of that?
To let everybody know they are there.
Exactly, that is the point. This is my man, take off your hand. Or this is my woman, take off your hand. So convincing this is the, who we are and what we are. That's what they're doing it. I mean, now that the celebration, mainly in the traditional, that's the main purpose, to let the public know these are coupled. So this deity of symbol and deity of gesture, the gesture or deity of mudra is the gesture, hand gesture, like a particular deity have a particular hand gesture when we perform that. These are to convince yourself, your visualization, either the from or the self generation is the real deity. And that is this divine identity is developed, created. And very, very, if you do this, like particularly in the retreat, sometimes 6 times a day, or at least minimum 4 times a day, spend hours in following the process. You will see how your mind is gradually tuned into it. And they're extremely, powerful. Extremely powerful. Okay, now that is just an example made to talk about how the visualizations, in the Vajrayana, how the visualizations are done, how the deity visualizations are done. It is not just simply oneself. Okay, in front there's nothing. So now suddenly there's a deity. Not in that fashion, in that form. Has a gradual, profound stages to be followed. Okay. Now,
I missed the last part. What was the deity of mudra and deity of symbol?
deity of mudra is hand gesture.
Hand gesture.
Yeah. Particular deities have particular hand gesture. For example, anyway. Then deity of symbol, the hand gesture that you have to touch one's own forehead, one's own shoulders, and one's. I've said in quite detail in this book if you read it there. So okay now I'm going to move a little bit further. This what I've said so far is really something useful to know the general how to structure Vajrayana, simple Vajrayana. It has a preliminary practice, like refuge, generating bodhicitta, some other things. Those are the preliminary practices. Many of the meditation manuals have that section. What I've done so far is just the middle part, the actual visualization. There are also later the visualization. There are some other sections which mantra recitations, some other things which I have not touched on. Okay, that's. Now I'm going to move the remaining 15-20 minutes before we have tea break. I'm going to move on most important things in the Vajrayana practice. That is only available in the high sort of Tantra, not in the 3 lower class of Tantra. Practices do not have this particular meditation, which is very important meditation, which really makes the Tantric practice very powerful or very effective practice. That is, in the Gelug tradition, that practice is done in the two levels, which I briefly touched on yesterday, the two levels. The first level is called generation stage, and the second level is called completion stage. Generation stage and the completion stage. I think, so that is. So now, the first I'm going to look at in the generation stage. Sometimes, why it is called generation stage, or sometimes, generation stage. It is called generation stage. Most of the activities during this first stage, in the generation stage, most of the activities are done simply in an imagination level. Sometimes this stage is called imagination stage instead of generation stage, called imagination stage. So what is imagined? What is generated here? And that is important now. What is imagined in here? It is imagined three stages: death, intermediate state, and rebirth. Those three are imagined, taking place during the meditation. Death, intermediate state, or pado, intermediate, and then rebirth. These three stages, which are taking place, within a one lifetime, or even within a day. If you say that death is like going to sleep, intermediate state, while in the sleep, having dream state, and when you wake up from the dream, that is rebirth. So these three stages, why these three stages are so important to be meditated on, there are several reasons. One important reason is this, particularly in the Gelug tradition, where how it is presented based on Guru Samaja Tantra. Main point is the practitioner needs to experience. The practitioner needs to experience the subtlest mind. Do you remember yesterday? That's called the fundamental, innate, clear-light mind. Fundamental, innate, clear-light mind. In the Gelug tradition, that's the term, and in the Nyingma tradition, in the Dzogchen tradition, Rigpa, or the pure awareness. That mental state, which we all have, while we are awake, while we are asleep, while we are in what you call the dreaming, all the time, that fundamental, innate, the clear-light mind is present all the time. However, that present is not experienced. That present is not experienced because of busy sense consciousnesses and conceptualization. That busy our activities of our sense consciousnesses and followed by this rich and complicated conceptualization, stop us to experience that fundamental, innate, clear mind. There are, different traditions have a slightly different way to approach that. For example, in the Dzogchen tradition, through the meditation, with the skillful meditation, practitioners can experience that the term they will use is pure awareness, Rigpa, while the person is fully, his or her whole the mental state is fully functioning, fully active. And that is some kind of unique practice in the Dzogchen. In the Buddhist tradition, which Gelugpa Tsongkhapa follows, for the ordinary people like you and me, to experience that fundamental, innate, clear-like mind, while our all other mental states are fully functioning, is almost impossible. Almost impossible. However, through the meditation, it is possible. Also, it is possible while our mental states go through a natural process, and particularly at the time of the death. At the time of the death, when the death processes start, the gross consciousnesses, mental states start to stop their function bit by bit by bit, different stages. Eventually, when the actual death occurs, yesterday there was a question, what is the actual death? I will come back to this a little bit later. When the actual death occurs, then what it will reveal, at that stage, the fundamental, innate, clear-like mind will reveal outer, naturally, all the gross consciousnesses, conceptualizations are stop their function. What it will reveal, that fundamental, innate, clear-like mind will reveal, or that will come to being, or reveal that. And the idea is this, the theory is this: while we are, while we are alive, if it is possible through the meditation, as I mentioned, through the meditation, try to experience that fundamental clear light, innate clear light mind. But if that is impossible in this lifetime, because that is not that straightforward, the idea is this: when the fundamental, innate, clear-like mind is revealed naturally at the time of the death, seize it. Seize that opportunity. Because that will occur naturally during the process of the death. And instead of letting that fundamental clear-like mind, letting into another circle of rebirth, letting go in that process, seize that opportunity, then turn into the path. Not into the samsaric process, but reverse process. And that is what the term is used, taking the natural death, taking the ordinary death into the path as a dhammakaya. Out of the 3 stages, that's the title for the first stage, called taking the natural or ordinary death into the path as a dhammakaya. I'll talk a little bit about what's dhammakaya, but that's what he's saying here is, during the lifetime, while we are alive, in the generation stage practice, with the deity, visualization of deity, going through the process of these 8 stages of the death. 8 stages of the death is mimic, is imagined, now going through this stage, now going through that stage, through that familiarize that actual death processes. It may not happen exactly every single detail of the 8 stages. It may happen a little bit here and there. That will, the theory is that during the lifetime, while we're alive, meditating, for example, His Holiness Dalai Lama says very often, to the public, that every day I do this meditation, a death process meditation with the deity, at least 5 to 6 times, because having different deity practice. All these different deity practice have this death process meditation, because that is the main part of the meditation. The idea is familiarize. At this stage, we are not dying. Meditator is not dying, but through the going in the imagination level, imagining going through different stages and making familiar these different stages have different sign, the internal different sign. So doing that, when the actual death comes, then being able to recognize it is coming. Death is coming, and it is coming, and it is reaching different stages. That will help when the fundamental innate clay-like mind is revealed by the natural process, able to hold that and turn that into path. And that's what meaning, taking the ordinary death into the path. So how that is taken into the path, that fundamental clear and innate fundamental innate clear-like mind, how that is taken into path, that when that fundamental innate clear-like mind is revealed naturally, and that turn into understanding of emptiness, and that is meaning of Dhammakaya, death, ordinary death, taken into the path as a Dhammakaya. What does that mean, Dhammakaya, in this state? That mind, that fundamental innate mind, itself is pure in the sense of itself has no pollution, no delusion in that level, and that realize that fundamental nature of the mind, clear-eyed mind, realizes another pure object, which is emptiness, and that is here called Dhammakaya, taking into the path as a Dhammakaya. So that is really very, very powerful meditation. And that is also sometimes the term is used, purifying the death process. So that sometimes that term is used. Okay, now we'll not have, although the schedule it says half an hour break, we'll have 10 minutes break. Then we will finish a little bit earlier than the schedule. Okay? So once again, we'll start this session. So now it's 20 to 4. So we'll do an hour session, then we'll end there. It's 20 to 4. We'll start the session first saying some mantra together once again. Then I will continue to talk further. Then if there are questions, we have left the time for questions and answers. Then we'll end this weekend's our course. on. So I was talking about death process, meditation on the death process. Some of you may familiar with the Buddhist meditation on death, relation to the Lamrim meditation, gradual path to enlightenment. There are this death meditation, but this is slightly quite a different death meditation. In the Sutriyana, death meditation is simply done simply to recognize nature of impermanence. Nature of impermanence. Death is certain. Time of the death is uncertain. Those kind of meditation. But here, the death meditation is done in a very, very different manner. It is done with 8 stages. With 8 stages. First 4 stages are related to the physical, this physical body. Physical body is associated with the 5 sense consciousnesses. When they, when the closer to death, when death is when closer to death, these physical, physical body and its function, and based on this physical body, the sense consciousnesses, they all start to deteriorate. I'm talking about going through natural death, an accident, then these are the exceptional cases in the natural death. And due to that kind of processes, that kind of different stages, some of those gross physical body start to stop their function, then it goes to more subtle and subtle and subtle. Same those, the what's called the 5 sense consciousnesses also start to stop their function. For some people, the process may last few days. Even if you're ordinary people, it may take a few days. For example, in 2005, my mom, my late mom, was diagnosed with untreatable cancer, and I went to India to meet her, but her body situation, her mental situation was still very clear and all right. So I spent with her 3 months together in our home. And during that period, I talked to her 2 things. I talked to her one, just to make familiarize or think lots about Cheresi with His Holiness, inseparable. And another one, I talked to her through the death processes. When death comes, you may have this kind of appearance, this kind of experiences, and so on and so forth. For 3 months, not every day, but some days she's not really healthy, some days are all right, but quite often we had this talk. And then after 3 months, there are some signs she's slowly recovering. Of course, there's no way to fully recover. So then I had to come back to London to lead some classes, because Jamian Center, needs a program. So I came back. And after 1.5 months back to London, and one afternoon I received a phone call from my brother saying, Mom is saying some of the sign that you explained to her is now she is experiencing. It's like, for example, feeling of her body is sinking. And that's one of the signs when the vitality, when the strength of the body start to deteriorate internally, the person may have that kind of experience, body sinking under the ground, like that. Some other signs. And therefore she asked me to come as soon as possible. Therefore death may occur, her death may occur at any moment. So that is like the sign, may not happen every single, in this book and other book, they explain different signs, may not happen every single sign, but may happen some of the signs. So in this case, as I mentioned earlier, meditators in the high Soka Tantra meditators, they really try to mimic, imagine this stage, that stage, this stage. Now this sign is coming. That means that I'm in this stage. After this, the next stage. In the next stage, this sign will occur. So that kind of imagination, through the imagination and the mimicking, and like an actual that process is happening. That is the really important meditation. Some other tradition also do the intermediate state meditation, Bado, when somebody passed away, when this life ceases, then between the next life is called intermediate state in English, in Tibetan, called Bado. It is the state where the new life is not started. All previous life is ended, new life has not started, between the two is called intermediate state. So some, also in the Guru tradition, there are also practice in that. Those are not that easy, but people can do this kind of meditation. Like for example, I don't know exactly how it happens, but there is this dream yoga, quite popular. I don't know exactly how closely that dream yoga is, meditation is done, but it's quite popular. But these are, if we do properly, these are very, very powerful practice. So what is happening in here is this. First I would say in Tibetan, Geshe Tashi. That means what is purified. What is purified? Purified the three things. What are the three things? Death, intermediate state, and rebirth, which is happening in our lifetime. These are the basis of purification. Geshe Tashi. These three, the death, intermediate state, rebirth, which we are in that process. When we talk about an enlightened being, sentient beings, unenlightened beings, we are under these three stages, continuing, without ourselves having any choice, ourselves without have any sort of anything to say. When we are going to be born, when we are going to die. These days you have some kind of euthanasia or something like that, but naturally we don't have any power. So these are what we call, and here it's called three bases of purification. It is in here within us. These are the, where we purify. And purified by what? Purified by what? Purified by the meditation on Dhammakaya, which I will talk a little bit later, meditation on Dhammakaya, or in English it is called truth body, Dhammakaya, truth body. Meditation on what's called Sambhogakaya, it is a Sanskrit term, Sambhogakaya, and in English, enjoyment body, and meditation on Nimanakaya, emanation body. So that is what here, what these three, death, intermediate state, rebirth, these three are purified through the meditation on Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya. So Dhammakaya is the truth body, that purifies the death. Sambhogakaya is enjoyment body, that purifies intermediate state, and Nimanakaya is emanation body, that purifies what's called rebirth. So what are the bases of purification? Death, intermediate state, and rebirth. Purified by what? Meditation on Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, truth body, enjoyment body, and the emanation body. What are the results? Meditating on like that, purifying, the death, intermediate state, and rebirth through meditation on Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. What is the result? The result is Buddha's three bodies. Buddha's three bodies are exactly the same what we have talked about: Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. So here, this meditation along the generation, as I mentioned, there are two stages in this meditation. Generation stage. At the generation stage, the meditation on death, intermediate state, and rebirth, the processes, through meditation on Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya, purely in an imagination level, Now, more and more, the practitioner more and more meditate in these three stages: death, intermediate state, and rebirth, through Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. His or her mental state, the minds become more and more focused on these three stages. The focusing on these three stages with the particular deity, what's going to happen is his or her mental state will get subtler and subtler. Gross mental state will sort of have less function while in the meditation, and the activities of the subtler mental state will become more obvious, more active. And that is some kind of, what's called the natural process. Naturally, when the gross minds are less active, subtle minds become more, they will more reveal, they will become more active. And it is the same in here. So at the generation stage, meditation on these three stages are done in a very, repeating again and again, mainly in the imagination mimicking level. The practitioner's mental states become more and more focused, and that focus become more, reduces many of those conceptualization, and it become develop more and more, further and further, depth in the concentration and more focused mind. That will eventually lead to the next stage. Next stage is called completion stage. Now here, in the completion stage, then the practitioners are introduced, practitioners are explained, they, what's called three levels of the body, 3 levels of the mind, and the 3 levels of energy. Gross mind, gross body, subtle body, and a very subtle body. gross mind, subtle mind, and a very subtle mind, and gross energy, subtle energy, and very subtle energy. So practitioners are explain this within this physical and mental, what's called the collection or this aggregate. There are these different stages or different levels of body, mind, and energy. By introducing that, of course, then there are different, detailed explanation. Explaining that what is happening there is practitioners are encouraged to utilize some of those subtle mental states, subtle body, subtle energy for the meditation, not the gross like what we have now. Subtle body, subtle mind, and subtle energies. By utilizing some of this subtle mind, subtle body, subtle energy, what is the mechanism, what's the purpose? Purpose is very, not in an imagination level, but in a real level, real sort of level, try to experience. Do you remember that earlier I mentioned that fundamental nature of clear light, or in the Dzogchen tradition, pure awareness. And that is how in the completion stage. I will not go any detail here because it is quite complicated. If I say more, it may cause more confusion rather than clarification. But that is how it is done. The theory is this. Each of us have this subtle mind, very subtle mind, and very subtle energy. These two are inseparable. Subtle, very subtle mind, which is called fundamental innate clear light, and a very subtle energy which goes with that very subtle mind. These two are inseparable, these two are present within us all the time. Recognizing, realizing, experiencing that subtle mind and subtle energy is the main part of the practice. So as I mentioned earlier, two occasions which in the Gelug tradition. One, naturally occurring that subtle mind at the time of the death. Another one, through the meditation, while the practitioner is fully alive, but through the meditation, then try to experience that fundamental innate mind and energy. Now, why is this so important? It is said this, and I think it's very useful to know in this particular. Samsara and the nirvana, samsara and the liberation. Samsara and liberation is two sides of the same coin. Samsara, unenlightened, and the enlightened, these two are the two sides of the same coin. A coin which has two sides. So this coin in here is this fundamental innate clear light mind with energy. This fundamental innate clear light mind with the energy, subtle energy, is carried on by the affliction, then it becomes samsara. This fundamental innate clear light mind is fully realized, then it becomes enlightened. And that is the I mean, in theory. In reality, I don't know. I've not done that. You know, I've not done that. But that's the theory. Quite often in the Vajrayana terminology, you know, they use this, saying that, you know, the konde yeme. That means samsara and liberations are inseparable. Konde yeme, inseparable. What does that mean? That means, in reality, while we are not realized, while we have not realized that fundamental, innate, clear-like mind, at that stage we are in samsara. When we realize that nature, we are in liberation. Cannot be separated. Separation is only when we have that ability to realize. So that is the really whole sort of trick here, going through the death processes, meditation. If we can't, and you know, in this lifetime, if we are unable to seize that fundamental clear mind, because the meditation is a long process, but try to seize it when it reveals naturally when it reveals at the time of death. Then use that. Seize that opportunity. Then realize it. And that is what here, yesterday we had this discussion, why the Vajrayana practice is very swift, very effective practice, quick practice. In fact, you know, it very much rely on this meditation on the death, intermediate state, and rebirth. Okay? That's it now. Ideally to have some kind of meditation, but it is not that ideal today to do that. We need to take a little bit time to familiarize that processes before we do the meditation. So not do that today. But people, if you like to know a little bit detail, in this book, I've said quite detail in all the processes, and also some other books, not just this book, some other books. There are, you know, very good explanation, and you know, the people who like to sort of explore a little bit further in the high Soka Tantra practice, that is really the powerful. In the Kriya Tantra or action or performance Tantra doesn't have this meditation, and that is the unique in the high Soka Tantra. Of course, visualization of deity is common in the Kriya action, you know, performance yoga as well as high Soka Tantra. But only taking these three basic stages, death, intermediate state, and rebirth, into the path as a Dhammakaya, as a Sambhogakaya, and as a Nimadakaya, that meditation is only in the high Soka Tantra. That is what here is saying, that, you know, purification, the purification of the death, intermediate state, and rebirth is the most powerful meditation in the Vajrayana practice. And that is the unique, and that's what really qualifies to say that Vajrayana practice is very swift practice that can, you know. Okay. So now we'll have a few questions. Yes.
Yes, I have a question. The dream yoga practice you referred to earlier,
yes.
For a person who already does the completion stage practice of high Yoga Tantra,
Okay.
should that person also meditate on dream yoga as well, just to familiarize
Okay.
with the clear light mind?
Yes.
Or if I broaden the question, a person who's just doing the Kriya Tantra, should that person do dream yoga as well?
There are some traditions even may, without associated with any deities, they may introduce dream yoga practice. But in here, this kind of tradition, dream yoga is quite advanced practice, advanced yoga. Sometimes I tease people to say, if you are unable to control your mental state while you are fully awake, how you are able to control your mind while you are in a dream? A person who wants to do a dream yoga, he or she should have some ability to control his mental state while he or she is fully awake. But that can be done. It can be done because in the dream yoga, the main substances is, first of all, you need to understand the dream is dream. That is the first important point. Not to confuse dream as real. So that when you are able to recognize while you are dreaming, it is a dream, it is not real, then you can visualize deity into that state. It is quite different from the visualizing deity at the time while we are fully awake, because the nature of the mind is different. The dream state, the mind is much subtler than while we are awake. So what is visualized as a deity at the time of the dream is subtler form than the deity where we visualize while we are fully awake. So that these are the very much, if you are quite able to visualize deity while you are fully awake, then you can use that as a stepping stone, to do the dream yoga. Dream yoga, which explained in the Buddhist Vajrayana teachings, but I've read some books, and listened watched some of those YouTube people saying I'm leading dream yoga, but that is very much. I'm not sure whether it's dream yoga. What is it? It is just simply, I know a lady. Now she passed away. A Western lady. She came to Jamyang for many years, but a very nice old lady, and she has this trained by herself, by her own. She has this, whenever she got dream, she is able to wake up. As soon as the dream finishes, she is able to wake up, immediately write down that dream. Some people look at that as a dream yoga, to wake up yourself and write down that. Then next day to look at what's gone there, and through that train your mind to dream in a particular manner, in a particular way. But whether that is counted, I don't think that's counted here in the dream yoga. It's quite different. Okay?
Yes, you mentioned earlier about that some sadhanas have the front generation and some self generation, some have both. Is there any explanation or like the function of the front generation? In what way it is different?
Yeah. One of the main differences between the front generation and the self generation, many of the front generation, front visualization, is done with what in the Tibetan what we call modukshua. It is literally translated saying to receive the blessing. Oneself is here, although it is one's own creation, one's own mind visualized into that, but still from that deity receiving some kind of blessings and so. And that is one of the reasons to do the front generation. Also from another important reason why they do prompt generation, to build the concentration. Prompt generation is very, very powerful to build concentration. It is very different cultivation of concentration with the deity visualization and with the, without, like the sutra, like Shine meditation. And here, because of the subtlety, because of the detail, the concentration is really, really powerful in here, compared to the meditation, Shine cultivation in the sutra. So but the from generation, self-generation is mainly, as I said earlier, self-generation, the purpose of self-generation is mainly done to reduce the sense of ordinariness, to reduce the appearance and graspings of the ordinariness. That is one of the main reasons to do the self-generation. And as I said, some states, some sadhana, some meditation manual have a both. Initially do the prompt generation, then through that do the self-generation, then eventually to dissolve the prompt generation into the self-generation. These are a little bit complicated, but it has this kind of, these are, I'm sure there are many different reasons. One of the reasons is sharpening the concentration. Sharpening concentration. And sometimes the size of the deities are reduced in a tiny, tiny bit. In time, when you look at, when you look at it from the keyhole, who is standing on the other side of the keyhole, you may see in time his or her face from the keyhole. Seeing that keyhole, from this keyhole, seeing that his or her face on the side of the door, face has not shrank, hole has not expanded, but still you are able to do that. And that is similar. When you, in order to enhance your concentration, initially you visualize the deity in a particular form, maybe size, then to shrink, to reduce, but not to reduce all the details and all the things. And that the example is used like looking through the keyhole on the other side of the image. The image has not shrunk, keyhole has not get bigger, but still you are able to see all. So that kind of front, self, together visualizations are extremely powerful to enhance concentration. It is said in the Vajrayana practice, shamatha and vipassana are developed at the same time, not in sequence. In the Sutrayana, first shamatha, then vipassana. In the Vajrayana, both are together at the same time. If you remember earlier what I said, through the emptiness, then search the meditation. That's the meaning of two are simultaneously cultivated. That's what you need. One or two questions? Yeah.
Yes, I was wondering about the four complete purities.
Oh yeah.
The first one, complete purity of environment.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how is there great importance of Tanka paintings in this?
No.
No.
The mandala in this case is a pure mental construction. In the Tanka painting, you see the mandala or the sun mandala, made of sand. These are just what in Tibetan, or there's another title called Lelang, is three-dimension mandala. These are simply to assess it, to help us to build, mentally to build the mandala. And here is nothing to do with the painting or the three-dimensional mandala, it is mentally to construct entire divine environment. Okay? Any other question? Okay, if you don't have a question, then we will end here. Thank you very much for coming, listening, contemplating. I know it's not easy, because when we come into this kind of topic, it needs long time to familiarize. First of all, to familiarize the terms, concepts. Then to familiarize the meaning. Then slowly do the meditation. And many of you, this might be your first time. Nevertheless, I said the first evening, that's how we should learn. First, familiarize the term. Maybe this weekend you may learn a few new terms, a few new meanings, and then gradually to build on that. Gradually build on that. Okay? So thank you for coming. Okay, what you want to do?
Right. So thank you so much and for this weekend and very good knowledge to try to understand more of. And of course we hope and wish that you will come back and teach us again.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You take care of yourself.
Thank you.
And we wish you a nice trip back to England.
Thank you. I don't want this one.
Yeah, okay.
I'll give it to you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll do a short dedication. A short dedication. Not very long. A short dedication. So last 2 days, the activities that we have done is a spiritual, virtuous activities, physically, verbally, and mentally participate in these activities, meditation, recitation, listening to the talk, contemplation. Therefore, all these activities have positive consequences, results, and we will dedicate all those positive consequences, results towards well-beings of many living beings, sentient beings, particularly sentient beings who are going through difficult times, either natural disasters or man-made disasters like war, like in Syria and in other parts of the world. So may those people find peace, harmony, and friendship. Also dedicate our virtues towards those great teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Sovereignty. May they have long life and all their virtuous activities be successful and without any obstacles. And also dedicate all those virtues, those people who gave us this opportunity, your partners, friends, family members, and also including the people who organized this weekend. May all those people have a meaningful life, happy life, productive life, and find a joyful joy and happiness, fulfillment in their lives. So hold those as our dedication, and if you like to say those words that I'm going to say, if you want to say with me, do so. Otherwise, just hold that in your mind. Chanju Sencho Remboche Ma Je Pa Nama Je Joche Je Pa Nyam Pa Me shin kang de pendang de wa ma lu jong ne jere se wa ten zin ja so ye sha be se de pa do ten ju